My name is Carol, I'm 59 years old, and my son told me to go to hell and get out of the house my late husband left for me. Before I tell you how his cruel words led to him and his wife losing everything and becoming homeless, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It's always good to know you're not alone in this world. It all started in the kitchen, the one place in the house that still truly felt like mine. I was wiping down the counters, the familiar scent of lemon cleaner in the air, when my son Michael walked in. He didn't saunter in for a snack like he usually did. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed over his chest, with an expression so cold it could freeze fire. "Mom," he said, his voice flat, completely devoid of warmth. It was the same tone he used when he had to fire someone from his old sales job. "Tiffany, and I need to talk to you." My heart did a little flutter of anxiety. I dried my hands on a dish towel, my mind racing. Maybe he'd finally found a new job. Maybe he was going to thank me for covering their bills for the last 8 months. I tried to keep my voice light. "Of course, sweetie. What's on your mind?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. He stared at a spot on the wall just over my shoulder as he dropped the bomb. "Tiffany's parents are moving in. You need to move out." The words didn't register at first. They floated in the air between us, nonsensical and absurd. "Move out?" My voice came out as a squeak. What do you mean move out? "Michael, this is my house." He shrugged, a casual dismissive gesture that felt like a physical slap. "Not anymore," he said. "We've decided. It makes more sense for them to be here. They can help with the baby when it comes." That was another little twist of the knife. They hadn't even told me Tiffany was pregnant. Just then, Tiffany herself appeared behind him, leaning against the doorframe. She had a smirk on her face, that familiar triumphant little smile she got whenever she felt she'd won something. She was holding her phone, scrolling lazily, as if this conversation was boring her. I stared at my son, my own flesh and blood, waiting for him to crack a smile, to say it was all some kind of sick joke. But his face was a mask of stone. My voice trembled. "Michael, where am I supposed to go?" He finally looked at me then. And the look in his eyes, it wasn't my son. It was a stranger. Hard. Uncaring. He leaned in slightly, and his voice dropped to a low, venomous sneer. "Go to hell," he said, each word a perfectly formed piece of poison. "I don't care." It felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. My hand flew to my chest, trying to hold my heart together as it shattered into a million pieces. All I could think about was my late husband, David. This house was our dream. We poured 35 years of our lives into these walls. After he passed away so suddenly from a heart attack 2 years ago, this house was all I had left of him. It was my sanctuary, my safe place. It was the only thing from our inheritance that mattered to me. When Michael lost his job shortly after, I didn't hesitate. I used a good portion of David's life insurance, money I was supposed to live on for the rest of my life, to finish the basement, turning it into a beautiful little apartment for him and Tiffany. I told them to live there rent-free, to save up, to get back on their feet. For 8 months I had cooked for them, cleaned up after them, paid the mortgage, the utilities, the property taxes. I did it all without a single word of complaint because he was my son and I loved him. And this was my reward. To be told to go to hell. Tiffany pushed herself off the doorframe and glided into the kitchen, her eyes scanning the room as if she were already mentally redecorating. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," she said, her tone dripping with fake sympathy. "We'll need your room for my mother's sewing stuff." Something inside me snapped. The grief, the shock, it all receded, replaced by an icy cold calm that settled deep in my bones. The tears that had been burning my eyes simply vanished. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I stood up straight, lifted my chin, and looked directly at Michael. A small, tight smile formed on my lips. It wasn't a happy smile. It was a smile made of broken glass and steel. He looked surprised. He was expecting a fight. He was expecting tears and begging. He wasn't expecting this. "Fine," I said, my voice quiet but as steady as a rock. "I'll leave." Tiffany let out a little laugh of victory. "Good decision." I turned and walked past them without another word, each step feeling like it was weighted with lead. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I heard Michael say to her, his voice low but clear, "Make sure she's out by tomorrow morning." My hand gripped the wooden banister so tightly I thought it might splinter. Tomorrow. They were throwing me out like a piece of trash, and they wouldn't even give me a day. I kept walking up the stairs, my head held high, even as their laughter echoed up from the kitchen below. They thought they had won. They thought they were watching a broken old woman stumble away in defeat. They had no idea they were looking at a woman about to go to war. I put my hand on the doorknob to my bedroom, the cold brass a shock to my system, and as I pushed it open, I knew exactly what my first move had to be. I stepped into my bedroom, and the silence was deafening. Every object in this room was a ghost. The faded quilt on the bed, the one David and I bought on our 25th anniversary trip to Vermont. The small crack in the corner of the dresser mirror from when Michael was 7 and threw a baseball inside. My life was etched into the very walls of this house, and they were trying to erase me. I walked over to the closet, my legs feeling like they were moving through wet cement, and pulled down the old dusty suitcase from the top shelf. The zipper was stiff and it took a hard tug to get it open. I started pulling clothes from my drawers, my movements robotic. A sweater, a pair of slacks, another blouse. Each piece of fabric held a memory I wasn't ready to let go of. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the small framed photo of David I kept on my nightstand. I stared at his smiling face, his kind eyes. "What would you do, David?" I whispered to the empty room. "What would you say if you could see our son now?" But all I got back was silence, punctuated by a shrill laugh from downstairs. Tiffany's laugh. It was like nails on a chalkboard. That's when my eyes fell on my jewelry box. It was an old wooden box David had carved for me one Christmas. It was sitting on the dresser, slightly ajar. My blood ran cold. I never left it open. With a trembling hand I lifted the lid. My heart stopped. The small velvet pouch where I kept my wedding ring was empty. David's wedding ring. After he passed, I had it resized to wear on a chain around my neck, but I'd taken it off last week to have it cleaned and put it in the box for safekeeping. It was gone. And I knew instantly who had taken it. Just last week, Tiffany had been in my room, admiring it. "It's a shame to let something so beautiful just sit in a box," she'd said, her eyes glittering with a greed-eyed mistaken for simple admiration. "It's a waste when the dead can't enjoy it." At the time, I'd been chilled by her words, but I dismissed it. Now the memory hit me like a physical blow. The grief I felt moments before was burned away by a white-hot rage. This wasn't just about kicking me out of my home. This was a desecration. They had stolen the most sacred piece of my past, the last physical connection I had to the love of my life. The fury was so intense it made me dizzy. I wanted to storm downstairs and scream, to rip the house apart until I found it. But I didn't. That was what they wanted. They wanted me to become a hysterical, crazy old woman. Instead, I took a deep, shuddering breath. I closed the jewelry box. I finished packing my suitcase, my movements now precise and deliberate. No more shaking. The tears of sorrow had been replaced by tears of pure, unadulterated rage, and I refused to let a single one fall. I zipped the suitcase, the sound echoing in the silent room like a gunshot. I dragged it out of the room and pulled the door shut behind me for the last time. As I reached the top of the stairs, I could hear them in the living room. Tiffany's voice loud and clear. "I can't wait to get rid of all this old lady junk. We can sell it and get that new sectional we wanted." Michael didn't argue. He just murmured something in agreement. They weren't just taking my home. They were planning to sell my life for a new sofa. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, Tiffany was standing there, blocking my path to the door. She had that same smug smirk on her face. "Let's see what you've got in there," she said, nodding at my suitcase. "Just making sure you didn't take anything that belongs to us." I stopped. I looked at her, this venomous creature my son had married. Then I looked at Michael, who stood silently behind her, refusing to meet my gaze. He was a coward. A spineless coward who would let his wife steal from his grieving mother. That's when my cold smile returned, wider and sharper than before. It seemed to unnerve her. She took a small step back. I didn't say a word. I simply walked around her, dragging my suitcase behind me, and opened the front door. The cool night air hit my face, a welcome shock. I walked to my car, put the suitcase in the back, and slid into the driver's seat. I sat there for a long moment, my hands gripping the steering wheel, knuckles white. I looked at the house, our house, glowing in the dark. And as I watched the lights flicker in the windows, I felt the last bit of motherly love for the boy inside wither and die. As I sat there stewing in my righteous anger, my phone vibrated in my purse. I pulled it out and saw the name on the screen. Sarah. My best friend. My lawyer. I answered, my voice shaking with fury. Sarah, I choked out. They've gone too far. It's time. Carol? What's wrong? You sound awful. Sarah's voice was a lifeline of sanity in my sea of chaos. He kicked me out, Sarah. I said, the words tumbling out of me. Michael kicked me out of my own house. He told me to go to hell. And that woman, she stole David's ring. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line, followed by a moment of steely silence. When Sarah spoke again, her voice had lost all its friendly warmth. It was the voice of Sarah the lawyer, the one who had a reputation as a shark in the courtroom. I knew it, she said, her voice tight with anger. I told you this was coming, Carol. That's why we did what we did 3 months ago. My mind flashed back. 3 months ago. Tiffany had started making casual comments, asking questions that seemed innocent at the time but now felt sinister. How much is the property tax on a house like this? Is the mortgage paid off? You know, with the housing market so hot, you could probably get a great price for this place. Then she started talking about their future, how they needed a bigger space, how my 2-bedroom house was perfect for a growing family. I had mentioned it to Sarah over coffee, laughing it off as my daughter-in-law being a bit pushy. But Sarah hadn't laughed. She'd looked at me with serious eyes. Carol, she'd said, David left you everything in his will, but Michael is your only child. If something happens to you, he gets it all. And that means she gets it all. You've seen how she is. She's greedy. You need to protect yourself. You need to protect David's legacy. First I had resisted. Felt deceptive. Sneaky. But Sarah was insistent. She was not only my friend, she had been my husband's lawyer for his business dealings. She knew how to protect assets. She laid out a plan that was both brilliant and simple. We formed a limited liability company, an LLC with a nondescript name. It cost a few $100s in legal fees. Then, quietly, through the proper legal channels, I transferred the deed of my house into the name of the LLC. Sarah was listed as the managing member and registered agent. I signed a lifetime lease agreement with the LLC, making me on paper a legal tenant with the right to live in the house until the day I died. The house was no longer owned by Carol Miller. It was owned by an anonymous corporate entity. Michael and Tiffany had no legal claim to it whatsoever. Not a single brick. We tucked the documents away and I never spoke of it again. It was my secret insurance policy. Now, sitting in my car in the dark, that secret felt like a suit of armor. So as far as the law is concerned, I said, a slow, grim satisfaction spreading through me, they are currently squatting in your property. Worse than squatting, Sarah corrected me. They are illegally occupying a property after forcibly removing the legal tenant. That's a whole other level of trouble. I'm looking at the paperwork right now. I could hear the rustle of papers on her end. Okay, here's what's going to happen. You go to the Marriott down the street, get a room, and order the most expensive thing on the room service menu. I'm handling everything. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock sharp, one of the junior partners from my firm, a big guy named Tom who used to be a Marine, is going to pay them a visit. He won't be alone. He'll have a police escort to ensure the peace. A police escort? I whispered, the reality of it hitting me. Standard procedure when we anticipate a hostile situation. He will serve them with a formal eviction notice. It will state that the property is owned by the LLC, and that they are trespassing. It will give them 48 hours to vacate the premises. Not 72. 48. No extensions. If they are not out by 9 o'clock on Wednesday morning, the sheriff will remove them and their belongings. My feeling of powerlessness, the crushing weight of betrayal, it all began to lift, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I had given my son everything. I had sacrificed my financial security, my peace, my home for his comfort. And he had repaid me with the deepest cruelty imaginable. Now he was about to get a lesson in consequences. A lesson he and his venomous wife would never forget. Thank you, Sarah, I said, my voice no longer shaking. Don't thank me yet, she replied, a grim smile in her voice. This is just the opening move. You get some rest. I have a feeling your phone is going to be very busy tomorrow. I ended the call and started the car. I didn't drive to the Marriott right away. Instead, I drove one more time past my house slowly. I saw a light flick on in an upstairs window, my bedroom window. They were in my room. The thought made my stomach churn. But the anger was a powerful fuel. I pushed down the accelerator and drove away, not looking back. I didn't need to sleep. My mind was wide awake, buzzing with anticipation for the dawn. Tomorrow, I thought to myself. Tomorrow, hell is coming to breakfast. The next morning, I was sitting in a corner booth at a Denny's across the street from the Marriott, a cup of untouched black coffee growing cold in front of me. My hands were perfectly steady. My heart was beating a calm, even rhythm. I had slept for a few hours, a deep and dreamless sleep, and had woken up feeling clear. The fog of grief and shock had lifted completely. I was no longer a victim. I was the architect of my son's downfall. I stared at the clock on my phone. 8:58 a.m. 2 more minutes. I pictured them in my house. They probably slept in my bed, David's in my bed. They probably woke up late, laughing, thinking about how they were going to spend the money from selling my old lady junk. The thought sent a jolt of pure, clean anger through me. At exactly 9 a.m. my phone buzzed. It was Sarah. I answered on the first ring. "Tell me everything," I said. There, Sarah said, her voice crisp and professional. "Tom and Officer Miller are at the front door. Tom just rang the bell." I closed my eyes, picturing the scene as if I were a fly on the wall. I knew that front door. I knew the sound of the doorbell. It was a cheerful chiming sound that now seemed horribly ironic. "Okay," Sarah continued, giving me a play-by-play. "The door is opening. It's Tiffany. She's in a silk robe. Looks like she just woke up. She's smiling that smug little smile of hers. I could see it perfectly. Tiffany leaning against the doorframe, all fake sweetness. 'Yes, can I help you?' she would have purred. 'Tom is introducing himself,' Sarah narrated. 'He's asking if she is Tiffany Miller.' She's nodding, looking impatient. Tom is handing her the envelope. She's looking at it, confused. Now she's opening it. I held my breath. I imagined Tiffany's eyes scanning the legal document. The bold letters at the top. Eviction notice. "Her smile is gone, Carol," Sarah said, a note of grim satisfaction in her voice. "Completely gone. She's shaking her head, saying there must be a mistake. She's saying this is her house now." "And Tom?" I asked. Tom is being perfectly calm. He just pointed to the name of the owner on the document, the LLC. He explained that the property is not owned by you, and that she and her husband are illegally occupying it. Her face. Carol, her face is the color of spoiled milk. A harsh, bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Wait," Sarah said. "Michael is coming to the door. He's shirtless, looks like he just rolled out of bed. He's yelling. He just snatched the papers out of her hand. Now he's reading them. He's shouting at Tom, calling him names." Officer Miller just stepped forward, put his hand on his belt. "Michael, shut up real fast." My phone suddenly lit up with an incoming call. Michael. His face, a smiling photo from years ago, flashed on the screen. It was a picture from his college graduation, a day I had been so proud of. Looking at it now made me feel sick. I declined the call without a second thought. "He's trying to call you," Sarah said, confirming what I already knew. "He's pacing on the porch now, phone pressed to his ear. He looks frantic. Tiffany is starting to cry. Not real tears, you know? The loud, theatrical kind." Another call from Michael. I declined it again. And again. And again. He was blowing up my phone. A rapid succession of calls and texts filled with rage and confusion. "They're starting to attract attention," Sarah said. "Old Mrs. Gable from next door is peering out her window." I smiled. Mrs. Gable didn't miss a thing. "Okay, Tom and the officer are leaving now," Sarah concluded. "The notice has been served. The clock is ticking. They have 48 hours. Well done, Carol. You stayed strong." We hung up and I sat there in the vinyl booth, the frantic buzzing of my phone finally ceasing. The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. I took a slow sip of my cold coffee. Tasted like victory. I thought the worst of it was over. I thought they would pack their bags and slink away in shame. But I had severely underestimated the depths of Tiffany's malice. As Sarah had said, this was only the opening move. Just as I was about to pay my check and leave, my phone buzzed with a notification from Facebook. A friend had tagged me in a post. I opened it, and my world tilted on its axis. Tiffany had gone live. And as I stared at the screen, I felt a cold dread creep up my spine. Wait until you hear this, Sarah's voice echoed in my head. Tiffany just screamed she's going to make the world believe you're a monster. I had no idea how literally she meant that. The video was shaky, filmed on a phone. Tiffany's face filled the screen, her makeup streaked with tears, her hair a mess. She was a picture of a victim, an image she had clearly crafted with care. Behind her, you could see the edge of my living room sofa. I can't believe I have to do this, she began, her voice cracking beautifully on cue. I am so scared, but I have to speak my truth. She took a dramatic, shuddering breath. My mother-in-law, Carol, has thrown us out on the street. My husband and I have nowhere to go. My jaw dropped. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. She's always been difficult, Tiffany continued, dabbing at her dry eyes with the back of her hand. She drinks. A lot. Last night she got angry about something. I don't even know what. She started screaming, throwing things. She pushed me. As she said this, she tilted her head just so, revealing a faint purplish mark on her cheekbone. It was skillfully applied makeup. I felt a wave of nausea. She was accusing me of assault. And now this, she sobbed, holding up the eviction notice to the camera. She had these papers drawn up to kick us out. We have nothing. And the worst part is. Here she paused, placing a hand protectively over her flat stomach. The worst part is that I think I might be pregnant. And she's throwing her own grandchild out into the cold. That was her masterstroke. The unborn grandchild card. It was a lie, of course, a disgusting, manipulative lie, but it was brilliant. The comments started flooding in. A tidal wave of hatred directed at me. What kind of monster does this to their own son? That old hag should be in prison. Assaulting a pregnant woman. Someone find this Carol woman. She needs to be exposed. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. It was happening so fast. My name, my reputation being shredded by strangers who believed this performance. Then the ultimate violation. Someone, probably one of Tiffany's friends, posted my phone number in the comments. Here's the witch's number. Let her know what you think of her. Instantly, my phone began to buzz with texts. Vile, hateful messages from people I had never met. Child abuser. Hope you rot in hell, you drunk. I know where you live. That last one made me gasp. For a moment I was completely overwhelmed. The world felt like it was closing in, the anonymous hatred of the internet a suffocating blanket. I felt a flicker of doubt. Had I gone too far? Was this my fault? Was I really the monster they were all painting me to be? I had to put the phone down on the table, face down. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to stop the shaking. The cheerful diner sounds around me faded into a dull roar. I felt exposed, violated, and utterly alone. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, drowning in the poison she had unleashed. I thought about the divorce rates, the family feuds over money, the stories you hear about families being torn apart. I never thought it would be my story. I never thought my own son would stand by and let this happen. Then I forced myself to breathe. One deep breath in, one deep breath out. I thought about David. What would he say? He'd say, "Fight, Carol. Don't you dare let them win." I picked up the phone again, my resolve hardening. I scrolled back through the video, forcing myself to watch it again, but this time I wasn't watching as a victim. I was watching as a strategist. I was looking for a mistake. And then I found it. Buried in her tearful rant, in a moment of pure, arrogant stupidity, Tiffany said something that would be her undoing. I have to stop here for a moment. Can you imagine that feeling? The entire world turning against you, believing a vicious lie? It's a terrifying, helpless feeling. But what they say is true. When your enemies are talking, let them talk. Because sometimes they talk themselves right into a trap. And that's exactly what she did. In her frenzy to make me look evil, she let her greed show. While crying about being homeless, she wailed. And this is how she repays us. After all our plans. We were going to fix this old pigsty up, sell it, and use the money to start our new life in California. She's ruined everything. My breath caught in my throat. I played it back again to be sure. There it was. A clear, unambiguous confession, broadcast live to the entire world. She had just admitted on camera to a plan to fraudulently sell a property she did not legally own. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. She thought she was burying me. She had no idea she had just handed me the shovel. I immediately picked up my phone and called Sarah. My voice wasn't panicked anymore. It was dangerously calm. Sarah, you need to see Tiffany's Facebook page. Right now. There was a pause as she presumably pulled it up. I heard a low whistle. Oh, you have got to be kidding me. The makeup on her cheek. That's a nice touch. Keep watching, I said. Go to the 3-minute, 42-second mark. I waited, listening to the audio from the video faintly through her phone. Then I heard Sarah's sharp intake of breath. Oh, Tiffany, she murmured. You stupid, stupid girl. This isn't just a simple eviction anymore, is it? I asked. Carol, Sarah said, and I could hear the excitement in her voice. This is no longer a simple eviction. This is a gift. She just handed us a case for defamation, slander, and best of all, a confession of conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. Get ready. We're going on the offensive. The next 24 hours were a blur of calculated strategic action. Sarah moved with the speed and precision of a military general. First, she had me forward the dozens of threatening text messages I'd received. She filed a police report for cyber harassment on my behalf, creating an official paper trail of the direct consequences of Tiffany's post. Next, she dealt with the video itself. She didn't try to get it taken down. No, she'd said over the phone. We want it to stay up. We want everyone to see it. It's our Exhibit A. She had her paralegal download a high-resolution copy and log it as evidence. The number of views was climbing into the thousands. The monster Tiffany had created was growing. But now it was a monster that was about to turn on its creator. Then came the call that changed everything. It was Mrs. Gable, my sweet, elderly neighbor from across the street. Carol, dear, are you all right? She asked, her voice trembling with concern. I saw that awful video that young woman posted. Such lies. I saw you leave yesterday, and you were the picture of grace. She was the one acting ugly. Thank you, Martha, I said, my voice thick with emotion. That means more than you know. Well, that's not all, dear, she continued. You know, my son installed one of those new security cameras for me last month, the kind that records everything. It points right at your front porch. I have the whole thing on video. You walking out, calm as can be, and that girl standing in the doorway with a nasty look on her face. There was no argument, no pushing, nothing. It's as clear as day. I felt a jolt, as if I'd been struck by lightning. A video. An impartial, high-definition witness that would obliterate Tiffany's central lie. Martha, I said, my heart pounding. Could you send that video to my lawyer? Already did, dear, she said proudly. Her office called me an hour ago. A very polite young man. Sarah was always 10 steps ahead. When she called me back, she was practically giddy. It's perfect, Carol. It's a slam dunk. We have her slanderous video, we have her on-camera confession to felony fraud, and now we have a third-party video that proves she lied about the assault. She's completely and utterly cornered. So what now? I asked. Now we lower the boom, Sarah said. She explained the new legal documents she was drafting. First, an emergency restraining order, prohibiting Michael and Tiffany from contacting me or coming within 500 feet of me, citing the video and the threatening texts as evidence of harassment. Second, a formal civil lawsuit. The complaint listed multiple counts: defamation of character, slander, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. We weren't just asking for them to be evicted anymore. We were suing them for damages. Substantial damages. We will serve them with this new lawsuit tomorrow morning, Sarah explained. Right along with the restraining order. The fraud confession will also be turned over to the district attorney's office. They might even face criminal charges. This will be the worst morning of their lives. I held the phone, staring out the window of my hotel room. The plan was terrifying in its scope, but it felt right. Felt like justice. They hadn't just asked me to leave. They had tried to destroy me. They had tried to strip me of my home, my memories, my dignity, and my good name. They had underestimated me. They saw a quiet, grieving widow. They didn't see the woman who had worked double shifts as a nurse to put her son through college. They didn't see the woman who had held her husband's hand as he took his last breath. They didn't see the steel that tragedy had forged in my soul. "Do it, Sarah," I said, my voice clear and strong. "Do it all." The next morning I didn't go to the diner. I stayed in my room and waited. The call from Sarah came at 9:30. "Served," she said simply. "Tom went with 2 sheriff's deputies this time." He said Michael opened the door. When he saw the deputies he went pale. Tom served him with the restraining order first. Then he handed him the lawsuit. He said you could see Michael's hand shaking as he read the words defamation and fraud. I pictured my son, the boy I had raised, standing on that porch realizing the game was over. "And Tiffany?" I asked. "She came to the door when she heard the commotion," Sarah said. Tom said when she saw the lawsuit she actually screamed. A real scream this time. Then she saw the printout of the screen grab from Mrs. Gable's security camera that we attached as an exhibit. And she just crumpled. Tom said she sank to the floor silent. The image was so vivid. The queen of drama, the master manipulator, finally silenced by the one thing she couldn't argue with. The undeniable truth. The game wasn't just over. It was checkmate. The silence on their end didn't last long. An hour after Sarah's call my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered, putting it on speaker. "Carol? It's me, Michael." His voice was unrecognizable. The sneering arrogance was gone, replaced by a raw, ragged panic. He sounded like a terrified little boy. "It's Mrs. Miller," I corrected him, my voice as cold and hard as a block of ice. "You lost the privilege of calling me Mom when you told me to go to hell." He stammered, completely thrown. Mrs. Miller, please. You have to stop this. The police were here. They served us with papers. They're talking about lawsuits, fraud, a restraining order. What is this? This is insane." "Is it?" I asked calmly. "Is it insane to protect yourself when your son and his wife throw you out of your home, steal from you, and then publicly accuse you of being a violent, alcoholic criminal?" "She didn't mean it," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "She was just upset. You know how Tiffany gets. She exaggerates. We can take the video down. We'll tell everyone it was a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I let out a laugh, but there was no humor in it. It was a brittle, ugly sound. Was it a misunderstanding when she put on makeup to fake a bruise? Was it a misunderstanding when she lied about being pregnant to get sympathy? Was it a misunderstanding when she broadcast my phone number to the world and I received death threats? "Tell me, Michael, which part was the misunderstanding?" He was silent, breathing heavily into the phone. He had no answers. He knew I had him cornered. "This has gone too far," he finally whispered. "A lawsuit. They're talking about a salary garnishment, seizing assets. We don't have anything. You know that. You've been paying our bills. You'll ruin us." "You ruined yourselves," I stated flatly. "This is not my doing. This is the consequence of your actions. Every single step of this was a choice you made." He started to cry then. Not the fake, theatrical sobs of his wife, but the ugly, gasping sobs of a man whose world was collapsing around him. "Please," he begged, his voice thick with tears. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Just tell me what you want. I'll do anything. Anything. Just make this stop." I let him cry for a long moment, listening to the sounds of his complete and utter unraveling. There was no satisfaction in it. Just a profound, hollow sadness for the boy he used to be and the man he had become. When he finally quieted down, I asked him the one question that mattered more than anything else. "Where is my husband's wedding ring, Michael?" The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. It was a silence filled with guilt and shame. It was a confession. I don't know," he finally mumbled, the lie weak and transparent. "Don't you lie to me," I snapped, my voice like a whip. "Not now. You stood by and let her take it. You stood there in my kitchen and let her call my life's possessions junk. You stood on that porch and refused to look me in the eye while she mocked me. You made your choice, Michael. You chose her. So now you can live with the consequences of that choice. What do you want?" he whispered again, his voice defeated. Here is what's going to happen, I said, my voice leaving no room for negotiation. You have until 5 o'clock this afternoon to get that ring back to me, undamaged. You will leave it in the mailbox at the house. Secondly, you and Tiffany will post a public, written apology on her Facebook page. It will state that her previous video was filled with lies, that I never assaulted her, and that the eviction was a legal matter based on your refusal to leave a property you did not own. You will admit you lied. She'll never do it, he said weakly. That's her choice, I replied. But if that ring is not in the mailbox and that apology is not posted by 5 o'clock, then I will instruct my lawyer to proceed with every single charge to the fullest extent of the law. I will see you in court. I will see you bankrupted. And I will testify at the district attorney's hearing regarding the fraud charges. Is that clear? He didn't answer. He just made a small choke sound. Is that clear, Michael? I repeated, my tone like iron. Yes, he whispered. It's clear. You have until 5 o'clock, I said, and then I hung up the phone. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt empty. I had just laid out the terms for the surrender of my own son. The afternoon crawled by at a snail's pace. I stayed in my hotel room, pacing back and forth, my phone sitting on the bedside table like a ticking bomb. Every time it buzzed, my heart leaped into my throat. It was a strange kind of agony, waiting to see if your own child would choose self-preservation over his wife's toxic pride. Part of me, a small foolish part, almost hoped they wouldn't do it. It would make things simpler, cleaner. It would mean I could cut them out of my life without a shred of guilt. At 4:45 p.m., my phone chimed with a Facebook notification. My heart hammered against my ribs as I opened the app. There it was. A new post on Tiffany's page. It wasn't a video. It was a block of text against a plain gray background. My eyes scanned the words, my breath held tight in my chest. A public apology to Carol Miller. I am writing this to offer my sincerest apologies for the video I posted 2 days ago. In a moment of extreme emotional distress, I made statements that were untrue and deeply hurtful. Carol Miller has never been violent towards me. My claims of assault were false. The situation regarding the house was a complex legal matter that I misrepresented to the public. I deeply regret the pain and harassment my actions have caused her. My husband and I are taking full responsibility for our part in this situation. It was stiff. It was clearly written under duress, probably dictated by Michael and typed by Tiffany through gritted teeth. It didn't mention the stolen ring or the fake pregnancy, but it didn't need to. It was a public admission of her lies. It was a complete and total humiliation. I scrolled down to the comments. The tide had turned with a vengeance. The same people who had been calling me a monster were now tearing Tiffany to shreds. So you lied about everything? Faked a bruise and everything? You're disgusting. What a pathetic excuse for an apology. You tried to ruin an innocent woman's life. I hope she sues you for every penny you have. You deserve it. The digital mob was fickle. Today Tiffany was their target. I closed the app feeling no joy, only a grim sense of finality. She had gotten what she deserved. Public shame. Now for the second part. I stared at the clock. 5:01 p.m. My heart sank. He'd failed. But at 5:03 Sarah called. Go get it, was all she said. My hands trembled as I drove back to my street. It felt surreal driving towards the house I had fled in the dark just 2 nights ago. I parked across the street, my eyes fixed on the front of the house. The curtains were all drawn. It looked quiet, defeated. Taking a deep breath, I got out of the car and walked to the mailbox. My fingers were clumsy as I opened the little metal door. And there it was. A small, padded envelope with my name written on it in Michael's familiar scrawl. I didn't open it there. I took it back to the car, my heart pounding. I ripped open the seal and tipped the contents into my palm. David's ring. It was warm from being held in someone's hand. I slipped it onto my finger, a perfect fit. And then the tears I had held back for so long finally came. They weren't tears of rage or sadness. They were tears of profound relief. I had gotten a piece of my husband back. I had gotten a piece of my soul back. I called Sarah as soon as I could speak. I told her the ring was safe and the apology was posted. I'll keep my end of the bargain, I said. We can drop the criminal referrals for fraud and the police report for the theft. but the civil suit for defamation and emotional distress. I want that to proceed. Are you sure? She asked gently. It will still be costly for them. I'm sure, I said firmly. Lies have consequences. They tried to ruin my name. That has a price. They can pay the legal fees, and any damages awarded can be donated to a shelter for abused women. But they need to learn that you cannot try to destroy someone and just walk away without a scar. I understand, Sarah said. I'll draw up the new terms. They'll be out of the house by tomorrow morning. I hung up and looked at the house one last time. The eviction was still happening. The lawsuit was still moving forward. They had lost their home, their credibility, and would soon lose a significant amount of money. They had surrendered, but they had not been absolved. I put the car in drive and pulled away. I had the key to the front door in my purse. I could go back tomorrow. I could reclaim my home. But as I drove towards the setting sun, a surprising realization dawned on me. I didn't want to go back. That house wasn't a home anymore. It was a crime scene. The next day, the moving truck arrived at the house. I didn't go to watch. Mrs. Gable gave me a full report later. She said it was a sad, quiet affair. No yelling, no drama. Just Michael and Tiffany, their faces grim, loading boxes into a U-Haul. Tiffany's parents, the ones who were supposed to be moving in, were nowhere to be seen. Apparently, when the scandal hit, they wanted nothing to do with their daughter's mess. The U-Haul drove away just before noon, and that was that. The house was empty. Sarah's office handled everything. They arranged for cleaners to come in and scrub the place from top to bottom, erasing any trace of them. They hired a real estate agent, a sharp woman named Maria who came highly recommended. When I finally walked back through the front door a week later, it felt strange, like walking into a stranger's house. It was clean, sterile, and hollow. The memories were still there, but they were tainted now, overlaid with the ugliness of the last few weeks. Maria, the agent, was blunt. The market is hot, she said, walking through the rooms. This place has good bones. We can sell it fast. You can take the money and start fresh somewhere else. Start fresh. The words echoed in my mind. For years my life had been about maintaining, about holding on to the memory of David, holding on to my role as a mother, holding on to this house. The idea of letting it all go was terrifying, but it was also exhilarating. The lawsuit settled out of court. Michael and Tiffany, facing a mountain of undeniable evidence, had no choice but to agree to our terms. Their lawyer probably told them it was the best deal they were going to get. They had to pay all of my legal fees plus a settlement for damages. It wasn't a fortune, but it was significant. As promised, I wrote a check for the full settlement amount to a local women's shelter. The letter of thanks I received from them a week later, telling me the money would help fund a new wing for women and children escaping domestic abuse, was more satisfying than any court victory. Selling the house was surprisingly easy. It sold in less than a month for more than I expected. After paying off the agent's commission and some closing costs, I was left with a substantial nest egg. I had my inheritance from David, the proceeds from the sale, and my own small pension. For the first time in my life, I was financially secure and completely, utterly on my own. I didn't buy another house. The thought of rattling around in a big empty space held no appeal. Instead, I started looking at small condos in places I had always dreamed of living. David and I had always talked about retiring to Florida. Somewhere warm where we could walk on the beach and feel the sun on our faces. The dream had died with him, but now a new version of it began to take shape. 2 months after the moving truck drove Michael and Tiffany out of my life, I was on a plane to Sarasota, Florida. I had found a beautiful, small 2-bedroom condo online, just a 5-minute walk from the ocean. It was in a quiet community with a pool and a garden club. It was perfect. I bought it without hesitation. The day I moved in, I carried only a few boxes of essential things. The rest of my furniture, my life's possessions, I had sold or given away. I kept the photos. I kept David's favorite armchair. I kept my books. Everything else was just stuff. That first evening I didn't unpack. I walked down to the beach, took off my shoes, and stood at the water's edge. The sand was cool, the waves whispered at my feet, and the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. I felt a sense of peace settle over me that I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't a wife anymore. I wasn't a mother in the traditional sense. I was just Carol. And for the first time, that felt like enough. I started building a new life one small piece at a time. I joined the garden club and discovered I had a knack for growing orchids. I volunteered at the local library, reading stories to children. And on a whim, I went to the local animal shelter. I came home with a scruffy, one-eyed terrier mix who had been found abandoned. I named him Buddy. He followed me everywhere, a constant, loyal companion. The nights were sometimes lonely. The silence of the condo was a stark reminder of what I had lost. But the days were filled with sunshine and the quiet hum of my new life. I was healing. The deep, gaping wound of my son's betrayal was slowly beginning to scar over. I rarely thought about him or Tiffany. They were part of a different life, a different world. I thought I had closed that chapter for good. Then, one day about 6 months after my move, a letter arrived. It was postmarked from my old town. The return address was a P.O. box. But I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was from Michael. My hand trembled as I held the envelope. For a long moment I just stood there in my sunny Florida kitchen, Buddy sniffing curiously at my feet. A dozen different impulses warred within me. Throw it away unopened. Burn it. Rip it into 1,000 tiny pieces and let the ocean breeze scatter the ashes. Every protective instinct I had screamed at me to not let that poison back into my life. I had built a fragile peace here, and this letter felt like a stone aimed at a glass house. But curiosity and perhaps the faint, stubborn ghost of a mother's love won out. With a deep breath, I slit the envelope open with a kitchen knife and unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. It was cheap notebook paper torn from a spiral binder. The words were written in Michael's familiar, slightly messy script. "Mom," it began. The word hit me with a surprising force. Not Carol. Not Mrs. Miller. Mom. I don't know if you'll even read this. I don't deserve for you to read it. I'm not writing to ask for your forgiveness. I know I can't be forgiven. I needed to tell you some things. I needed you to know. My eyes scanned the lines, my heart beginning to pound a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. Tiffany and I are getting a divorce. She left me about a month after we moved out of the house. When the money from the settlement was gone, and she realized there was no big payday coming, she said I was a disappointment and a failure. She packed her bags and went back to her parents. I haven't heard from her since. A part of me, a dark and vengeful part one was ashamed to admit existed, felt a grim flicker of satisfaction. Of course she left. Her love was as transactional as a business deal. I'm working now, the letter continued. A construction job. It's hard work, manual labor. The pay isn't great, not like my old salary, but it's honest. Feels real. I live in a small apartment above a garage. It's not much. At night it gets lonely, and I have a lot of time to think. And all I think about is you. And what I did. I let her poison my mind. I was weak and I was greedy. I saw the house, your house, as a shortcut to the life I thought I was supposed to have. I didn't see it as Dad's legacy. I didn't see it as your home. I just saw dollar signs. And when you stood in my way, I let her convince me that you were the enemy. It was easier to believe that than to admit I was being a terrible son. The things I said to you in the kitchen that day, they haunt me. Go to hell. I said that to my own mother. The woman who raised me, who sacrificed everything for me. There is no excuse. I was a monster. I destroyed the only good and decent thing in my life. And it wasn't the house. It was your love. I broke it. I threw it away like it was nothing. I'm sorry. They're just words and they're not enough. They'll never be enough. But I am sorry. I'm sorry for the pain I caused you, for the humiliation, for the ring. I hope you're okay. I hope you're happy somewhere. You deserve to be happy. That's all. I won't bother you again. Your son, Michael. I read the letter a second time and then a third. The carefully constructed walls around my heart began to crumble. The tears I thought had dried up long ago began to fall, silent and hot, splashing onto the cheap paper and making the ink bleed. He wasn't making excuses. He wasn't asking for anything. It was a raw, honest confession from a broken man. The man my son had become. I have to stop for a second. I sat with that letter for a week. Every day I'd take it out and read it. What do you do with something like that? Forgiveness is a powerful thing, they say. Frees you. But does it mean you have to forget? Does it mean you have to open the door to let the person who hurt you back in? Before I tell you what I did, I want you to ask yourself honestly, what would you have done? For days I was torn. Part of me wanted to pick up the phone to hear his voice to say, "It's okay, come home." But the other, wiser part of me knew it wasn't that simple. The damage was too deep. The trust was shattered. Letting him back into my life now might not heal me. It might just break me all over again. A mother's love is a powerful, dangerous thing. It can make you do foolish things, forgive the unforgivable. I had to be smart. I had to protect the new life, the new peace that I had fought so hard to build. Finally, after a week of walking on the beach and talking to no one but Buddy, I knew what I had to do. I sat down at my small kitchen table, took out a nice piece of stationery and picked up my pen. I wasn't going to call. A phone call was too immediate, too emotional. This needed to be careful. This needed to be right. "Michael," I wrote, my pen gliding across the thick, cream-colored paper. "I received your letter. Thank you for writing it. It must have been very difficult to do. I want you to know that I have read it many times, and I believe you are truly sorry for what you did. You wrote that you broke my love. That's where you're wrong. A mother's love isn't a fragile thing that can be shattered. It's resilient. It's enduring. It's a part of me and therefore a part of you. I will always love you, Michael. You are my son. That is a fact that can never be changed. But love and trust are two very different things. My love is unconditional. My trust, however, must be earned. And you didn't just break my trust. You took a sledgehammer to it. You pulverized it into dust. You stood by and allowed your wife to steal from me, to lie about me, to try and turn the world against me. You chose greed and convenience over loyalty and family. That is the damage that was done. Rebuilding trust is not something that can be done with a single letter or a phone call. It can only be rebuilt over time with consistent, honorable actions. You have started that journey by taking responsibility for your actions, getting a job, and standing on your own 2 feet. For that, I am proud of you. That is the son I remember raising. I paused, looking out the window at the blue sky. I had to be honest, both with him and with myself. I need to tell you that I have forgiven you. I am not saying those words for you, Michael. I am saying them for me. I cannot move forward with my life carrying the weight of so much anger and bitterness. It's a poison, and I choose not to drink it anymore. So I forgive you. I release it. I let it go. That forgiveness, however, does not mean I am ready to forget. The wounds are still healing. I have built a new life for myself here. A peaceful life. It's a life I need to protect. For that reason, I don't think we are ready to see each other or speak on the phone. Not yet. The pain is still too close to the surface. I am not closing the door forever. But for now I need more time. You need more time. Continue to build your life. Continue to be the man I know you can be. Perhaps one day when we have both healed more, we can find our way back to each other. Until then, know that your mother loves you and wishes you peace. All my love, Mom. I folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope, and addressed it to the P.O. box. Walking to the mailbox under the warm Florida sun, I felt a sense of release so profound it was almost dizzying. I had spoken my truth. I had set my boundaries. I had offered love without sacrificing my own well-being. I dropped the letter into the slot. As it disappeared, I felt the last heavy chain of the past fall away. I didn't know what the future held for Michael and me. Maybe we would reconcile one day. Maybe we wouldn't. But for the first time, I was okay with that uncertainty. My happiness was no longer tied to him or anyone else. It was mine. I walked back to my little condo where Buddy was waiting for me at the door, his tail wagging furiously. I clipped on his leash and we headed down to the beach, our feet sinking into the warm sand. The ocean stretched out before us, vast and blue and endless with possibility. And I smiled. A real genuine smile. My life was my own again. And it was beautiful. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. It wasn't easy to share, but I think it's important to talk about these things. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice to love someone from a distance to protect your own peace? Let me know in the comments below. Your stories give strength to all of us. And if you found any part of my story helpful, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It truly means the world.